There is an old claim, and it is a strange one to say out loud, that a light was hidden in you before you were born and that you were made to forget it. The texts that carry this claim were sealed in jars and buried in the sand of Upper Egypt, and for 1600 years almost no one read them. When a farmer turned them up again, they spoke something strange and very simple, that what you are, underneath everything, is a portion of an unnameable source, that you fell asleep inside a world that taught you to forget, and that a voice has come down to wake you. This is not a sermon, and it is not a sales pitch. It is a slow walk through one of the oldest maps of the inner life, and a practice you could begin tomorrow morning. We will name where each piece comes from. We will keep three things apart that are easy to blur: what a text actually says, what a tradition asks you to hold as its myth, and what you can check in your own body. And we will not pretend the map is tidier or the old teachers more agreed than they were. So hold the core image first, because the whole of it hangs here. A source beyond every name, a hidden light in you that came down from it, a forgetting that veils the light, a call that comes to wake it, and a rest you are returning to. 5 movements, 1 shape. Begin with the map. The center of this teaching is a body of texts scholars call Sethian, and the clearest of them is the one we call the Secret Book of John, the Apocryphon of John. It opens with the source, and the first thing it does is refuse to describe it. It calls the source the invisible spirit, the monad, the one. You cannot say what it is. You can only unsay what it is not bodily, not measurable, not nameable, not even rightly called a god. The nearest the text will come to a word is immeasurable light. From that source, the text says, comes its first thought, Barbelo, the forethought, called the Mother-Father, the first image of the invisible spirit gazing into itself. From Barbelo unfolds the self-begotten, the autogenes, and 4 great luminaries with strange and beautiful names. And then the text says, something of that uppermost light was placed, hidden, inside the human being. It calls this the luminous epinoia, the awakening insight, the one who was to awaken the thinking of the sleeper. The text is careful, and we will be careful with it. Its own word is the epinoia, the power, the light. The familiar phrase, divine spark, is a later gloss from other Gnostic writings. Keep the word the text uses. And what is this light's home? The text has a word for it, anapausis, rest, repose, the unshakable stillness of what it calls the immovable race, the seed of Seth. Note that word rest, because it will return at the end of every road we walk today. So the Sethian shape is the shape we already named. A source beyond name, a hidden light in you descended from it, a forgetting that veils it, a call that comes to wake it, a rest you are returning to. Hold that as the spine. Now we bring in the others, and the honest work is to let them point at the same structure without flattening them into one another, because they genuinely disagree. The philosopher Plotinus, writing in the 3rd century, calls the source the one or the good, and says it is beyond being itself. That is the same move as the invisible spirit. You know it only by stripping away every predicate, taking away everything until nothing is left to say. Plotinus even gives the method its instruction. Aphel Panta, take away everything. But here is a difference you must not paper over, because it is honest and it is sharp. Plotinus knew these Sethian texts. People in his own circle were reading them, and he wrote a treatise against them, what we call against the Gnostics. He refused their evil maker. He refused the idea that the cosmos is a malicious prison. He refused salvation by secret revelation. For Plotinus, the world is a beautiful image of the divine, and some part of your soul, he says, never came down at all. At your summit, you never left home. So from Plotinus, we take a rigorous method of unsaying, and the reassurance that the source is never absent. But his one is impersonal. It does not lean toward you. It does not call. That is the opposite of the Sethian forethought who descends crying your name. Use his method. Don't quietly swap his metaphysics in for the one we started with. One thing of his, though, we will need badly later. His eros, the soul drawn upward by love and longing, not by technique alone. The Gospel of Thomas names the source with no machinery at all. No barbelo, no luminaries, no archons, no fall. Thomas has no cosmology. It simply says, the kingdom of the Father, the light, the old, and its gift is radical nearness.
The kingdom is inside you, and it is outside you. It is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it.
Thomas says you are already from that light, and to it you will return, that the kingdom is not coming on a date you must wait for, it is here, unseen, in the room. And its central instruction is not assent, but integration.
When you make the two one and the inside like the outside, you will enter the kingdom.
Make the two one. Heal the split between the inside and the outside, between who you are and the self you present. That line is Thomas's own, his 20-second saying, and we keep the credit straight. It is not a Valentinian formula, however often it gets borrowed into the wrong column. Where the Sethian myth points up and out, past the powers, Thomas points here and now. See correctly, make the two one. Keep both poles. Don't graft Sethian archons onto Thomas, because there are none there, and don't let the longing to ascend crowd out the simple work of seeing. Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical tradition, calls the source Ein Sof, the infinite, the without end.
No thought can grasp you at all.
And like the Sethian texts, parts of Kabbalah hold that the soul is literally a portion of God above. That rhymes with the epinoia. But two differences matter, and one of them will change how you practice. First, in Kabbalah, Ein Sof is the sole good source, and the 10 Sephirot through which it unfolds are God's own self-revelation, not rulers to escape, not archons, not a prison. To cleave to God here is to climb back up your own route, not to break out of a counterfeit world. Second, Kabbalah's animal soul, the appetites, the raw life in you, is not an alien implant. It is a created, good, divinely purposed part of you, and the work is to elevate it, to turn its energy toward the source, never to disown it. Hold that, because in a moment it gives us a crucial rule about what, exactly, you are meant to let go of. Hermeticism, the Greek-Egyptian wisdom of those same centuries, calls the source nous, mind, and says its essence is light and life, that the human being is kin to it and can come to know it by knowing itself.
Light and life is God the Father, from whom the man was born.
That is close to the epinoia in the human. But the Hermetic cosmos is good, a beautiful image, not a dungeon, and its craftsman is a luminous second mind, not an ignorant tyrant. For the Hermetist, return is harmonizing with a divine world, not escaping a false one. So once again, take the kinship, the light and life, the becoming like God by self-knowledge, and leave the prison behind, because in this house there isn't one. Two more, named only to keep them honest. The Valentinians are the tradition most often confused with the Sethian one, and the confusion is worth ending cleanly. Their source is depth and silence, Bythos and Sige, unfolding as 30 eons in 15 pairs. That is not the world of the secret book of John. In the Sethian story, Sophia falls alone without her partner, and what she produces is the ignorant maker. In the Valentinian story, Sophia is the youngest of 30. The Valentinian bridal chamber is not the Sethian five seals. Their genuine gift is a non-punitive spirit. Their father was never wrathful. The veil is only forgetfulness, and as their gospel of truth says, error had no root. Take that gentleness. Keep the apparatus separate and labeled. And the Christian contemplatives, the hesychasts of the Eastern Church, and the apophatic writers name a God beyond every assertion and denial, and aim at theoses becoming God. But here the sharpest line of all. Their theoses is participation, by grace, in God's energies, by a creature who remains a creature. It is not the waking of a spark that was always divine. The resemblance in method is real. Their unsaying mirrors the invisible spirit's negations almost word for word. But it is a shared technique between two different gods, not proof of one. From them we take three things only: the method of the single repeated word, the engine of love over analysis, and the reminder, easy to forget, that watchfulness exists for the sake of love. So strip all of these to the bone and notice, honestly, without forcing it, what actually recurs. First, a source beyond name, approached by unsaying. Second, something of that source carried in you, whether as the same substance, or as kin, or as a creature able to share in it. Third, a fall into dispersion and forgetting. Fourth, a return by turning inward and stripping away. And fifth, an end that several of these texts name with the very same word, anapausis, rest. The secret book of John, Thomas, and the gospel of truth all land on repose. Plotinus reaches the same place and names it differently, no longer two, but one. A real convergence in structure and in technique. And keep the divergence unblended, because that is what keeps this honest. Is the world a prison or a beautiful image? The Sethian answer is prison. Plotinus, the Hermetists, the Christians say image. Is the return an escape, or a harmony, or a homecoming? Are you the source itself, or kin to it, or a creature lifted by grace? These are not the same answers, and the practice does not need them to be. You can stand inside one myth as your own, and still borrow the finest instruments other mapmakers built, as long as you say, plainly, that you are borrowing. If a light is already in you, why don't you feel it? Why are you not already home? The texts give an answer, and it is not the answer the later churches gave. It is not that you are a sinner who broke a law. It is that the light is veiled, and they name the veils precisely. The first veil is forgetting. The secret book of John is blunt about it. The chief archon, it says, made the human drink the water of forgetfulness, that they might not know where they came from. The gospel of truth says ignorance of the Father grew thick, like a fog. The first veil is that you have forgotten your origin, and forgotten that you forgot. You don't experience it as amnesia. You experience it as ordinary life, taken for granted. The second veil is the one most distinctive to this tradition, and the most useful tool in it. The text says the makers cast over the human a counterfeit spirit, an imitation of the true spirit, working through implanted passions, so that you mistake compulsion for your own will. Now this is myth, and we hold it as myth, but translate it carefully into something you can watch. And here is where we need the rule we set aside earlier from Kabbalah. The counterfeit spirit is the hijacking, the driven, automatic, must-act-now quality of a craving or a fear. It is not the human feeling underneath. The grief, the hunger, the fear, the longing, those are your real, good human energy, the animal soul that is meant to be turned toward the light, not amputated. So the rule, which we will use in the practice, is exactly this. You disown the hijacking, never the human being who was hijacked. The third veil the text calls fate, the chain that binds you to live by chance and necessity. Drop the cosmology and it is exact and ordinary. Habit, conditioning, the autopilot that runs the same reaction on the same trigger day after day while you believe you are choosing. The fourth veil is the grasping mind, and here we keep two registers apart. In the myth, Plotinus calls it Tolma, the soul's audacity, its wish to belong only to itself, turning its single attention outward and scattering into the many. That is a doctrine about the soul, held as myth. Separately, in the register you can actually observe, there is a cousin you can watch directly. The overbusy analytical mind, narrating, defending, never quiet long enough to drop into rest. The two rhyme. Don't weld them. One is a story you hold. The other is a thing you can notice this afternoon. And the fifth, the texts say the human default is sleep and drunkenness.
Arise from the deep sleep, become sober from the drunkenness of darkness. Where are you rushing, drunken men? I found them all drunk, I found none of them thirsty.
That last is Thomas. The first is the descending forethought in the secret book of John. The second is Hermes. Across all of them, the picture of the human condition is the same, and the word for rescue is the same. Not punishment, not pardon, waking up. You live on autopilot inside a kind of trance, and salvation here is sobering up. So what is misalignment, really, once you set the cosmology to one side? It is induced forgetting, plus a counterfeit overlay running on automatic. Inside a fog, the grasping mind keeps thick, while underneath the overlay a real, good human vitality waits to be turned toward the light rather than thrown away. And here is the part you can verify without believing any of the myth. The effect the myth describes is observable. Automaticity, identification with craving, rumination, living on autopilot. These are ordinary, watchable things. Whether an archon literally poured a cup, you cannot test. That the fog is real and that it can lift, that you can watch. The path is what changes over months and years, not in a single sitting. All of these traditions, even where they fight about the cosmos, agree on the shape of the road. And the stages overlap. You don't finish one and unlock the next. You keep returning to all of them while the emphasis moves slowly forward. The first stage is awakening, the click. It begins as simply as catching yourself mid-autopilot and feeling the snap from trance into lucidity. Thomas frames the whole arc in a single saying.
Let one who seeks not stop seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. When he is troubled, he will be astonished, and he will rule over all.
Notice the order. Seeking first makes you troubled, and trouble is a stage, not a failure. In the Greek version of that saying, found on a scrap of papyrus, there is one more word after rule. He will rest. The Coptic stops at rule. The Greek adds rest. Worth knowing which is which. This first stage is the most immediately checkable thing on the whole path. You can feel the click in the first week. The second stage is purification or disidentification, and it takes months and never entirely ends. Here you apply the rule we built. You do not tag every feeling not me. That way lies a cold and dissociated person. You tag the compulsion, the driven, must-be-obeyed quality, as the counterfeit overlay, while the human energy underneath you meet. The contemplatives call the watching nepsis, cutting the thought at its first suggestion. Plotinus calls it the sculptor's cut, carving away to reveal the form. And the sign that its working is subtle. The passions begin to feel foreign as compulsions, while their underlying energy stays available to you. The marker is simple, observed rather than obeyed. The third stage is the inward turn. Attention reverses. Plotinus gives the instruction in 5 words.
Go back into yourself and look.
Turn from the seen to the seer. Stop facing only outward, into the stream of objects and tasks and worries, and turn toward the awareness in which they appear. The secret book of John frames it as ascent past the powers, Kabbalah as letting the felt I go quiet, the Hesychasts as the descent of the mind into the heart, gathering scattered attention out of the head and into the center. The sign that it is deepening. The turn becomes available even on a hard day, not only an easy one. The fourth stage is union, or repose, the call answered. And the texts are honest that this one is not yours to command. The end point is not ecstasy, it is rest. The secret book of John calls it anapausis. Thomas calls it repose. The gospel of truth says, simply,
They rest in the one who rests.
and here the Sethian distinctive returns. Return is response to a call, not pure self-effort. In the secret book of John, the forethought descends 3 times into the depth of the dark, and the 3rd time she speaks.
I am the forethought of the pure light. I am the thinking that dwells in the light. Arise, remember, and follow your route.
So the posture in this stage is listening, not generating. And it is, honestly, not willable. Plotinus, by his student's account, reached full union perhaps 4 times in many years. You prepare, you do not manufacture. And what carries you across the dry months, when technique gives nothing back, is not technique. It is longing, the eros Plotinus named, the love the English contemplatives named. Most days you touch the earlier markers, stillness, gathering, quiet, not the summit. That is normal, and it is correct. The 5th stage is stabilization and turning outward, and this is the rest of a life. The fruit is not a state you visit, but a way of standing that you carry. And it must turn outward, or it curdles into a serene selfishness. The traditions that diagnose the inner life best are also the ones that name the missing limb most plainly: love. The desert teacher Evagrius said it without flinching: dispassion exists for the sake of love. The whole point of becoming unhooked is to be freed to love. Plotinus guards the inner side with a line worth keeping.
Never did the eye see the sun unless it had become sun-like.
You cannot perceive what you have not become. But the outer side is love made ordinary. The silence is real only if it makes you kinder. The final work is not collecting techniques. It is character and love. The whole arc in one line. Wake, discern, turn inward, rest in the call, and carry it outward as love. Months and years, not minutes. Here is the practice itself, what you would actually do. But first, plainly, the safety, because intensive inner work has real failure modes, and the old teachers knew it. The deep forms of name chanting and the prayer of the heart both came with old warnings against doing them alone, without a guide. So 3 gentle rails. Keep it gentle and bounded. Do the modest durations given here, and do not escalate into hours of breath-holding or marathon chanting on the theory that more must be better. It isn't. Have one trusted person who knows you are doing this and will tell you the truth, a friend, a teacher, a therapist. And know that intensive contemplative practice can stir up strong states. Go gently, don't force it. And if you have a history of serious mental health conditions, do this alongside a professional or a teacher, not alone. If a feeling of unreality persists after you stop and re-engage with your day, if sleep collapses, if dread or dissociation worsens week over week, that is a signal to pause and seek help, never a wall to push through. With that in place, the shape of the sit is a single descent, active, then quiet, then silent, then rest, then return, so you are never wrenching between opposite gears. Each movement settles into the next. And one thing runs underneath the whole sit, not as a separate step: watchfulness. Whenever a thought grabs you, tag the compulsion, not the feeling, answer it with nothing but your single chosen word, and return. A word about the breath, honestly. You will breathe slowly, about 6 breaths a minute, roughly a 5-second in-breath and a 5-second out-breath. This is a modern target. It happens to be the rate at which heart rate variability tends to peak, and it has a real, measurable, calming effect on the nervous system. But it is a modern measurement. The old traditions did not know they were doing it, and most of them weren't. So don't tell yourself that every tradition secretly discovered this rate. The honest version is plenty. 6 breaths a minute is a modern target with a real and checkable effect on your body. Set your breath there deliberately and leave the folklore out. The full practice takes about 25 minutes, and it works best in the morning. It has 5 movements. First, wake and settle, about 5 minutes. Before the day's noise begins, reverse the water of forgetfulness with a simple recollection. Say slowly, as a fact about yourself, the light in me is from the source. It did not come from the maker of this body. I have been asleep, drunk on forgetting. I open the eyes of the heart. Then ask Thomas's 3 questions and answer them in your own silence. Where am I from? From the light. Who am I? A child of the living one. What is the sign of the source in me? Movement and repose. Then simply sit, eyes closed, and move your attention slowly through the body and the space around it, letting the breath lengthen. You are dropping out of analytical narration into a quieter, present state. You will feel it, a settling, a drop. That much is plain physiology. Defocused attention and a slow breath raise the body's calming tone. No grander claim is needed. Second, breath and sound, about 10 minutes. Breathe at that slow 6 a minute rate, and on each out-breath carry 1 anchor, only 1, never 2 at once. The simplest and the best on most days is a single name or a single word riding the out-breath. The listening word, the 1 syllable the English contemplatives recommended, held lightly and returned to whenever the mind wanders. That is all. On days you want sound instead, there is a toning practice, 3 vowel pairs, sounded 1 per out-breath, rising through 3 centers of the body, from the belly to the chest to the head. Be honest about what this is. The syllables and the rising root are a modern technique, a recent map, not something from the ancient texts. Use it freely. It does real, mundane good, because slow-sounded breath calms the nervous system, but don't date it to antiquity. And 1 genuinely useful instruction governs the sound, held as a good modern instruction and nothing older. Sound it first inwardly, in the heart, before you ever voice it with the mouth. Let the listening come before the making. Third, listening for the call, about 5 minutes. Now stop generating. Turn attention from the scene to the seer, go back into yourself, and look. Practice the unsaying. Whatever image of the source arises, light, space, the word God, even the word oneness, gently release it. Not this, not this. Take away everything. And then hold the central posture of this whole path. Wait and listen for the call, the way the eye waits for the sun to rise. And let the waiting be loving, not blank. The thing that holds you here through the dry months is longing. As the old English contemplative wrote,
By love he may be gotten and held, but by thought never.
You are not staring into emptiness. You are yearning toward home and listening for it to answer. Whether anything external literally calls is the tradition's myth, held as myth. What you do is the loving, receptive posture, and that is a real and legitimate thing to do. Fourth, rest, anapauses, about 3 minutes. Now drop the technique. Drop even the searching, because the gospel of truth ties the anguish to the searching itself. So the move is to stop grasping and let the fog thin into stillness. Rest in the one who rests. Don't manufacture anything. Don't try to feel a particular way. This is the homecoming quiet, the cessation of inner agitation. And one honest check. If the rest goes cold, numb, or foggy rather than warm and spacious, that is not repose. We'll come back to why that distinction matters. Fifth, see and carry, about 2 minutes. Open your eyes. Before you stand up into the day, see the way Thomas sees. The kingdom is spread out upon the earth, and people do not see it. Look at the actual room, the ordinary light on ordinary things, as already that unseen kingdom. That is the here and now pole, balancing the reaching of the listening. Then set one concrete act of love for the day, one person, one kindness, one place to make the two one by acting from your inner reality instead of your presented self. The silence is only real if it makes you kinder. Carry the residue out with you. That is the full version. But most days are not full version days, so there are smaller forms and they are not lesser. On a hard day, do the short version, about 8 minutes, the recollection and the 3 questions, then 5 minutes of slow breath with a single name and the watchfulness running underneath. Then 1 minute of rest, then open your eyes, see the ordinary as kingdom, and set one act of love. On a collapsed day, the worst kind, there is a 60-second flaw. One line, the light in me is from the source. I have been asleep, I wake. Then 3 slow breaths. Then one kind act, chosen for the day. That is the whole flaw. And on the hardest day, it keeps the thread from breaking, and the kindness keeps it from turning inward only. And through the ordinary day, there are anchors that take no extra time. A few times, stop and ask, am I asleep or awake right now, and use the question to snap into the present. When the body slides into a familiar stress reaction, name the compulsion, take one slow breath, and redirect before the program runs. Return to the name in dead time, walking, waiting, before sleep. Once or twice, stop and look at something ordinary as the kingdom unseen. And the one non-negotiable outward limb, one deliberate kindness every day. Now state the honest frame once, calmly, so that you can practice without re-arguing it every morning. Keep 3 registers apart always. The first register is what the texts actually say. The invisible spirit and Barbelo and the luminaries, the luminous epinoia hidden in the human and greater than its makers, the counterfeit spirit that draws people astray, fate as the last of the changeable bonds, the water of forgetfulness, the forethoughts cry to arise from the deep sleep, the seed of Seth. Thomas's sayings, Plotinus's take away everything, Ein Sof, whom no thought can grasp. These are genuinely in the texts. You can quote them, but that a text says a thing is one fact, that the thing is true of reality is a different claim entirely. Don't let the first masquerade as the second. The second register is the tradition's myth, held as practice and as identity, not as belief forced against the evidence. The whole cosmology, that you are light descended from the source, that a forethought literally calls, hold all of it as your myth and your frame, and live inside it, without asserting it as physics. That is not dishonesty. It is simply knowing which register you are standing in. A person can live by a story they do not claim to have proven. The third register is the one you can test, and here you must be most careful in both directions. Untestable are the cosmic mechanisms, that archons literally implanted a forgery, that fate literally binds you to the stars, that the uncreated light is photons a meter could read, that your intention reshapes matter. Testable are the effects in your own body. Slow breathing at around 6 a minute raises your calming vagal tone, well supported, Naming a feeling produces a modest drop in its grip, real, though not magic. The sober click of catching yourself on autopilot is directly observable. Gratitude shifts mood. Claim the effect. Hold the mechanism as myth. Never let the myth borrow the laboratory's credibility, and never let a small lab finding swell up into the myths. And because honesty means naming what is false as well as what is true, a few specific claims deserve to be quietly retired, not with a sneer, just set down. There is a famous three-word prayer of Jesus, said to come from the Gospel of the Hebrews. It does not exist. No such fragment survives. Don't repeat it. The toning syllables and their body root are modern, not ancient, good to use, wrong to date to antiquity. Sound it in the heart before the mouth is a fine instruction, and a modern one, not a maxim handed down from the old masters. The claim that every tradition independently discovered the six-breath rate is false. It is a modern target, and only one rosary practice was ever actually measured near it. A rise in heart rate variability during slow breathing proves only that you breathed slowly, not that you touched the divine. And the whole chain that runs from sound to the water in your cells, to a quantum field, to matter obeying your intention, that is not in any of these texts, and it is not how the world works. Toning's real effects are calming and bodily and enough. Drop the rest. The honesty is not a footnote to the practice. The honesty is the practice. And the one precision rule that holds all of this together. The Sethian and the Valentinian are not the same system. Barbelo, the Epinoia, the counterfeit spirit, Yaldabaoth, the five seals, the seed of Seth, Sethian. Depth and silence, the 30 eons in 15 pairs, the bridal chamber, Valentinian. In the Sethian story, Sophia falls alone. The Valentinian Sophia is the youngest of 30. And make the two one belongs to Thomas. Neither Gnostic system is Hermetic, or Platonist, or Kabbalist, or Christian. Each is its own God, its own cosmos. The convergence is in structure and technique, never in identity. Keep the columns clean, and the whole thing stays honest. So how would you know you are coming home? The traditions converge on a set of felt markers, and we hold them in one hand while keeping, in the other, the testable signs, and we never let the testable ones prove the spiritual ones. The first marker is the sobering, the click, the snap from trance into lucidity. It is the most reliable early sign, and you will meet it first. The second, the compulsions begin to feel foreign, the craving and the fear experienced as a driving that is not the whole of you, while the human energy under them stays yours. You begin to feel a self that is prior to, and larger than, the conditioned one. The third, the frantic search quiets. Grasping relaxes into being found, the fog thins, the felt posture shifts from defending yourself to feeling known. Then the gaps between thoughts lengthen. Then sometimes a luminous quiet, an inner light reported across many of these traditions. Notice it, never chase it. Then warmth, and sometimes a quiet tear, signs of a deeply settled state. Then the strange turn where you are sounded rather than sounding, the prayer saying itself, the receiving rather than the producing. And then the two that matter most. Love made ordinary. You are spontaneously kinder, less defended, more able to act from your inner reality, the one outward marker and the truest. If the practice makes you more serene, but no more loving, something has gone wrong. And rest, anapausis, the cessation of inner agitation, the homecoming quiet. That is the goal, and the surest sign you have touched home. Alongside those, the testable correlates. Over weeks, a resting heart rate that trends down, a morning heart rate variability that trends up, lower anxiety, steadier mood, sharper focus, better sleep, the plainly noticeable click of deautomatization. You can check these. They are not evidence of the cosmic claim, and the practice's worth does not depend on them. And one thing demoted on purpose: the rise in heart rate variability during the slow breathing itself is not a marker of alignment. Breathing slowly produces it mechanically. It tells you that you breathed slowly and nothing more. One check is important enough to name on its own, because two very different states can feel alike from the inside. Genuine repose is warm, alert but relaxed, spacious, connected. You can open your eyes and re-engage the day easily, even gladly, and the world looks more real, not less. A dissociative or depressive shutdown is also quiet, also still, but it is numb, cold, foggy, detached. The world looks unreal, you cannot easily re-engage, and there is an undertow of dread or deadness. If your rest keeps landing in that second column, that is not the stillness of the immovable race. It is a nervous system state to take seriously. Stop the deep work, re-engage your body and other people, and if it persists, use the safety rail. And the honest pitfalls so they don't ambush you. The trouble stage is real and is not failure. Seeking makes you troubled first, then astonished. Don't read the disturbance as a wrong turn. There will be a dark night, long flat stretches where nothing happens and the silence feels empty. That is not the practice failing. Every tradition knows it. It is exactly what longing is for. When technique gives nothing back, love is the fuel that keeps you in the chair. There is spiritual bypassing. Using the compulsion is not me to dodge real harm or responsibility. The cure is the rule and the outward love. Disown the automatic driving, never the human feeling or your accountability. There is the chasing of lights, hunting warmth and visions as proof of rank. The old fathers warned against it. Markers are to notice and release, never to pursue. There is what we might call manifestation creep, the practice quietly turning into a tool for getting things you want, which is the exact opposite of letting the self go quiet into the source. When you feel it happening, return to rest, because the point is to come home, not to acquire. And there is inflation, the become God language curdling into grandiosity, a wired elation, a sense of special destiny. The break is Plotinus's honesty. Union is rare, brief, and not yours to own. The fruit is humility, equanimity, and love, not a sense of having arrived. If elation tips into something restless and unsleeping, treat it as a safety signal, not a breakthrough. One last word. The texts say a light was hidden in you, that you were made to forget it, and that a voice came down to wake it. You do not have to believe that as physics to live by it as your truth, and to test its fruit in your own life. The practice is simple, and it is small. Wake, discern, turn inward, listen, rest, and carry the silence back into the day as kindness. Do the full version when you can, the short version on the hard days, the floor on the worst. Keep one trusted person near. Watch the counterfeit compulsion slowly lose its grip, while the human energy underneath comes home with you. Let longing carry you through the dry stretches. And when the searching finally quiets, and you find yourself, for a moment, sounded rather than sounding, that is the rest the old texts were pointing at, and it was never as far away as the forgetting made it seem. We have only pointed at these texts here, a line at a time. If you want to hear them whole, our companion channel, our hidden archive, reads them straight through, untouched, the secret book of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Hermetica, in their own words, with nothing added and nothing sold. Go and let them speak for themselves. We will be here, in the quiet, when you return.